It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. It makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch. It's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and thoughts and the ink stains that have dried upon some line. That keeps you in the back roads by the rivers of my memory. That keeps you ever gentle on my mind. It's not clinging to the rocks and ivy painted on their columns now that bind me. Or something that somebody said because they thought we'd fit together walking. It's not knowing that the world will not be cursing or forgiving when I walk around the railroad track and find that you're moving on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and hours you're just gentle on my mind. Though the wheat fields and the clotheslines and the junkyards and the highways come between us, and some other woman's crying to her mother 'cause she turned and I was gone, I still might run in silence, tears of joy might stain my face, and the summer sun might burn me till I'm blind. But not to where I cannot see you walking on the back roads by the rivers flowing gentle on my mind. I dip my cup of soup back from a gurgling, crackling cauldron in some train yard. My beard a rustling towel and a dirty hat pulled low across my face. Through cup hands round the tin can, I pretend to hold you to my breast and find that you're waiting from the back roads by the rivers of my memories, ever smiling, ever gentle on my mind.
And a good Monday night, everybody. Chris McDonald with you back on the first show of the week here on this Monday night, the 19th day of February, President's Day here in the United States of America. We've got our dear buddy Jeemes Akers on the phone with us tonight. Jeemes, it's always a pleasure to see you, man. Good to hear from you, and looking forward to a quick discussion on a Monday night. I'm grateful for you, and always a pleasure, and good to have you as always. And I'll get more into what we're going to talk about in just a second.
Always good to be with you, Chris. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Buddy, always a pleasure, and we're going to make this a regular occurrence. Listen, just before we get into what we're going to talk about tonight a little bit, your thoughts about President's Day and where the country's at, and, we're just not in a good place, man. We witnessed this travesty of justice in New York over the weekend with Trump, with the judge, and then it just seems like every time we turn around, the crimes are happening all over the place. Very, very serious situations. And it just seems like we're losing our country, James, very quickly. And I know we're trying to be as positive as we can, but there's just some things you just have to be realistic about, that we're just not in a good place on this President's Day. And the White House just seems to be hell-bent on destroying the country. And it really is all branches of government. I mean, the judicial, legislative and executive branches. There's just nothing that seems to be going right now, and I don't see where this ends. Do you?
Well, I just think it's everything we're looking at's indicative, at least in my mind, to just a breakdown in leadership all across the waterfront. In my mind, at least, for both parties, the bench is really thin when it comes to people of integrity, and that's as an American, that's just an absolute shame. And what they're doing to Trump is just a simple case of lawfare. They're trying to use the courts to dwindle his influence and his money and tie him down with all of these sorts of crazy things. In my view, I know there's another view of that, but that's my take on it.
Right.
Meanwhile, the administration, and it has spots of success, but for the most part, it seems like we're sleepwalking into one disaster after another.
Are you concerned for our national security right now as a former CIA operative that's been all over the world and has seen things pretty much that some of us probably would not even want to see and know about? But are you, like me, I'm like this getting into an area, Jeemes, that, look, I know President Trump's not perfect, but one thing about President Trump's 4 years in office, I think most Americans felt safe under him. I think we felt that he understood the world. He understood the dangers we faced. I think the world respected us. These tyrants, these dictators that are doing a lot of stuff. I read a report tonight. I don't know how true it is. I don't know if you heard about it. One of the Russian foreign ministers, he threatened nuclear war, literally, on America and England if the Ukraine war ended in a very bad way, that they pulled the nuke card out. We ain't heard that kind of talk since the 1980s, man. During Brezhnev, Gorbachev, and Khrushchev, and all that, bro. I mean, that goes back 30, 40 years now. We ain't heard that talk, and that's how dangerous this world's become. And I'm just curious how you see that, because that's not nothing that should send warm fuzzies up our back tonight of where we're at as a nation.
No, Dmitry Medvedev, who actually preceded Putin when for constitutional reasons Putin couldn't have another term in office, his sort of hand-picked successor is who you're talking about, and he has been going to social media and Western news outlets, and he has been very frank about, we are not going to let all of our Russianness go down the drain here. And if it means that we have to pull out the nukes, we're going to do it. And that is scary talk. You don't see it in the mainstream media. You don't hear any politicians talking about it. It's like this. They're just completely dismissing this as an idle threat. It isn't. This comes from a guy that has inroads to the very halls of power in the Kremlin and is close to Putin's right ear. These points of view are not to be dismissed, and I think it's a mistake for us to dismiss them. In terms of the national security of the country, I'm sort of two minds on that. I'm a Vietnam veteran and proud of it. I wear a hat everywhere I go, and I love this country and everything it stands for, and I love the military. And what we're doing to the military, at least it seems to me from a distance, and I could be wrong, but in terms of making everything, instead of equipping and training our military to fight, they're spending time in classrooms with all of these politically correct agendas. and so that concerns me. But on the other hand, there's I know from my studies of history, that there were times when people were ready to give up on the military in Great Britain before World War II, and this, that, and the other. And I think there's something special about the American character, and I am counting on that at the end of the day, that there is something special about the American character. We hear all this noise and buzz from the political extremes,
Right.
There is for mainstream America. It's the same with all of these organizations now in Washington. At the top, they may be well, let's just call it like it is. They're rotten to the core. They're more concerned about their individual political agendas than they are the welfare of the organization. But down in the organization, the people that really do the work, I am still convinced, are good American citizens. And so I'm of two minds with it. I hear all the talk about the concerns, and I think they're rightly placed. But my faith is in good old-fashioned American ideals of hard work and integrity, and it is my hope that those ideals are going to triumph at the end of the day.
I feel confident in that too, James. I really do. Listen, I titled the show tonight, I wanted to talk to you a lot tonight about Israel. We've got, of course, other news I'm sure that we could talk about, but it's been a while since I've actually dedicated a show to what's going on in Israel, because there's been a lot of news that has really went under the radar that's been very concerning to me. I'm looking at the World Israel News website, and there's like 2 or 3 narratives that are basically developing, and we talked about this maybe the last time you was on, and I was very concerned. I've always been concerned from the beginning, and I remember talking to you about this when Joe Biden first came out in October, and he had all this blather and all this bluster that America was going to stand with Israel, and we had Israel's back, and Israel was going to, they could depend on the United States, and that lasted about a month and a half, and now all of a sudden it went from we were behind Israel to basically that there is this push by the United States to get Israel to stop the campaign into Gaza. They're calling for a Palestinian state almost daily now. And there's a report tonight, I'm looking at it right now, that the Palestinian Authority, which is headed by Mahmoud Abbas, funneled $280 million that Israel gave them for humanitarian aid to reward terrorists. And they're basically paying out 3,550 terrorists that are in prison, and then 20,000 slain martyrs, quote unquote. Money that they got from Israel for humanitarian purposes, James, is going to terrorists. That does not bode well, and the United States seems to be sitting and having a blind eye to this. And Benjamin Netanyahu, people can think what they want to Bibi Netanyahu, but he basically is telling his people tonight, he had a speech today, he said, we have to finish the job of eliminating Hamas in Rafah. And that is basically a blank you to the United States, because Joe Biden and his foreign secretaries and foreign ministers are telling Israel you need to stop this incursion. The other question, the part B of this question, is this. When you hear these things and you hear that Israel is rejecting this offer to basically form this Palestinian state, and the Americans are pressuring her to do that, does that not sort of mean your faith people, and does that not give you pause for concern that we're sort of not just sticking our finger in Israel's eye, but we're sort of sticking our finger in God's eye too?
Yeah, well, that I can see where you draw that conclusion, and I agree with in large part with it. I would invite your listeners to read a really interesting article in Time magazine recently. It's by Ian Lustig, and the title of it is "How the War Will End." And in that article, he talks about every situation in which Israel has been pushed militarily. It ends up coming back, and just before it can clinch things, there's pressure brought to bear by the Western powers to keep it from finishing the job.
Right. Right.
It's a really interesting article. And so I think what we're seeing is what has happened before historically. I was reading the article that broke, I think, this afternoon about the U.S. supporting a UN Security Council resolution, a draft resolution calling for a ceasefire.
Yes, they did.
It's the first time we've done that in this present configuration of events, and there is some interesting wording in there. In other words, a ceasefire as soon as practical. Well, you know, the Israelis and everybody else will have different definitions of that, but it's largely in response, Chris, to an Algerian draft resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the UN. So Israel has very few friends in the UN these days. One good thing, if you can call it a good thing, the U.S. draft resolution begins with a paragraph condemning Hamas for what happened on October the 7th.
That's correct.
None of the other UN resolutions even address that.
No, they do not.
You know, it's just as if Israel, for no reason whatsoever, is committing all of these military activities, and you know, they leave out the cause of it all.
Well, let me just add to that, Jeemes. I'm right now. We just posted this article in our Telegram war room. The Palestinian premier tonight basically calls for unity with Hamas, and he tells the world literally tonight to stop focusing on October the 7th. How can you stop focusing on October the 7th, my friend? That changed the world. You know, I think I was mentioning this over the weekend. 9/11 was an earmarked day for this nation. What happened on 9/11 will never, it changed the course of human events for this nation to we'll never go back to a time before it because of what happened. I hope we don't. But if you look at what happened on October the 7th, Jeemes, I would argue that was a changing of the guard for Israel. I don't think Israel goes back ever again to how it was before because of the barbarism that was perpetrated upon the nation that was worse than anything the Holocaust. Even they said that was the worst attack since the Holocaust that they saw. And when you start hearing these things from these Palestinians, and these are the same Palestinians that Joe Biden and his administration are out there telling the world tonight that Israel needs to recognize as a state. That's like putting that would be like us putting a terrorist campground in South Texas or South Arizona or Southern California or Southern New Mexico, carving out about a 150, 200-mile radius and saying, okay, we're going to put people that hate us to destroy us and give them a statehood within the borders of the United States. James, nobody would put up with that. But we're wanting Israel to put up with that. And that ain't cool, buddy. I'm telling you something. This is going to bring a response from the heavenlies about this, but it's going to be the death of the United States of America, not Israel.
Well, you know, I mean, I think we are in basic agreement on a number of these things. Scripture clearly points out that God has a favorable view of those that support the Jews, and has the opposite view for those that try to wipe them out. And there is a blessing for a nation that supports Israel. I'm convinced of that. There's in the spiritual realm that counts for a whole lot, whereas in the world's eyes, it is just the opposite of that.
That's so true, James. That is so true. And most of the time, if you get down to it, isn't what the world loves, God hates, and what the world hates is usually what God loves. And the world hates Israel tonight. And, I read a Bible commentator here over the weekend, and it was so beautifully said. And it's sad in a way because Israel is in a place of darkness tonight, without a doubt, spiritually. But she is blind to Christ, but the world hates her because of Christ. And you mentioned a while ago about her not having any friends in the UN. Jeemes, she ain't got any friends in the United States right now. I mean, it's clear that this administration has turned hostile to the Jewish state, and they do not want to see Israel basically defend their border and defend their country from this terrible attack that took place. And look, nobody. I read an article. Speaking of articles, there was one that the guy was basically saying, look, if this would have happened in the United States, there is no way. And Benjamin Netanyahu actually quoted this article. He quoted this very sentiment in a speech last week. He said America would not tolerate this happening to their nation without a response. They would not tolerate it. We'd hoped we wouldn't. But he's basically saying you're expecting Israel to do something that nobody in this world would do, my friend. And that's the moral equivalency of what we're looking at here. Nobody, after suffering the barbarism on October the 7th, should expect Israel not to go in there and clean these demonic terrorists out. Look, we pray for their soul. But you got to confront evil. If you don't, evil will perpetrate into more evil, correct?
Yeah, I am very interested, and I'm watching now. I agree with you, Chris, that I'm watching Rafah now.
Yes, Rafah is where they're at.
Rafah is, there's a wonderful Reuters piece that came out a couple days ago that says the Israeli military has 6 to 8 weeks. Rafah is like the last bastion of Hamas. And in this article, it says that the Israelis, this campaign. Remember when Israel was sort of standing off, and everybody was wondering what they were going to do about Gaza, and there was all this talk about the tunnels, and there would be all these enormous losses for the Israeli IDF when they went in, and this, that, and the other. They have had, in my eyes, a remarkably successful campaign in Gaza, cleaning out the tunnels and cleaning out the terrorists. Of the 24 battalions, I think, if I read it right, they have totally disabled 18 of those. The remaining ones are buried deep in Rafah. And so that is why the world, that is why the U.S., why this administration, why everybody's trying to keep them out, arrange a ceasefire to keep them from going into Rafah, because that's where they would clear out the last nest of these guys. And if they don't do it, then we're going to have problems down the road with those same people, is the way I look at it.
I look at it too. I just posted the article you mentioned a while ago about the betrayal of the United States, that Biden himself proposed this anti-Israel temporary ceasefire, Jeemes, at the U.S. Security Council. And this came today, and it says it publicly would not support an attack on Rafah, at least without an evacuation of civilians. Jeemes, the way I look at it, Hamas, did they care about the civilians on October the 7th and an evacuation of civilians, basically before they went and killed babies and so forth? I mean, seriously. I mean, what? Yeah. I mean, who in the world? Go ahead.
The the horns of the dilemma the Biden administration find themselves on is that there have been two calls that we know of, Biden to Netanyahu and trying to put pressure on Netanyahu to call off the Rafah operation unless the Israelis can come up with a credible plan to ensure the safety of civilians.
And they can't.
What other ally would we put those preconditions on when it comes to war? I'm not sure there's a single one that we would put those preconditions. Only we think you can fight war by guaranteeing the safety of civilians. And the Israelis, the Americans admit they've gone overboard trying to do that, trying to lessen civilian losses and this, that, and the other. But if you read the mainstream media right now, the number they're fixed with is 28,000 in these military operations in Gaza have been lost. We have no idea how they divide that figure between terrorists or civilians or anything else. The Israelis claim they've hit about 12,000 terrorists in the Gaza operations. Hamas admits to only losing 6,000. And so, there's this sort of numbers game that's going on. But the broader, looking at it, telescoping out and looking at it, this whole concept that you can wage war without hurting civilians and without causing shortages, food shortages or water shortages or refugees, when a country basically supports the terrorists, allows them to dig under hospitals, UN facilities, and other things, is just absolutely crazy.
Well, it's crazy, but that's the world we live in, buddy. Listen, we got about 10 more minutes here. I do want to get your take. We could stay on this all night, but I do want to get your take. We got some breaking news coming off of Breitbart. This is insane. Speaking of insanity, President Trump, they've ruled tonight. I want you to listen to this story. We just posted it. He must pay $500 million, James, $500 million, before he can even appeal the New York decision by Akers over the weekend. I'll just read the paragraph. Former President Donald Trump must pay nearly $500 million as a bond. They're making him pay this as a bond to New York State before he can appeal the ruling by Judge Arthur Gorin last week that he must pay $354 million in fines, over $450 million with interest for fraud. Critics have noted that Trump is the only person ever to be sued under an obscure New York fraud statute that does not require any harm to be done, and that effectively criminalizes the everyday practice of real estate valuations and negotiations with banks. I want to say this. I think it was the governor earlier tonight. I want to just read you the statement, James. This is how politically motivated this was. She goes out today, and somebody made a point of this, and this is what she says. New York's Democrat governor assured real estate developers today that they won't be targeted for real estate violations or valuations like Trump, which basically just admitted it was a purely partisan political prosecution and persecution of Trump himself. So, James, all this was, she's basically trying to assure all the real estate people out there that do the same thing as President Trump did. And again, there was no harm. He paid the loans back. But because of this political hit job, they're going after him. And now, to add insult to injury, he's going to have to come up with $450 million more almost. That's $500 million, man. It's $500 million to even file an appeal on this. How messed up is our justice system tonight? We got about 5-10 minutes.
I'm not sure that that's going to stand constitutional water.
I don't either.
you cannot bribe, or you cannot force a person to bribe the court in order to file an appeal. That's just ridiculous. That goes against every legal precept that we have in this country. So I don't think that is going to stand. And it's for sure that I think, and I've got a couple relatives that probably their idea is that Trump is such a surly character that anything that happens to him, he deserves. But outside of that small group of people, I really think that all of this stuff is going to be counterproductive. That it should be pretty obvious to everybody that they are going after Trump for political reasons, and the very crimes he's getting charged with, they're letting other people get by with. And so I don't think the American people are actually that dumb. And I think they're going to read between the lines on this one. And at the end of the day, all of this stuff may bounce back to bite them in the tail.
Well, you hope, Jeemes. But look, I'll put it like this: I want to have faith in the American public, but right now I don't, and I just don't. If you were a business person, I'll just ask you this question: if you were a business person, a real estate person, would you, in the wildest hallucination nightmare, ever invest in New York State, in New York City, after what you just witnessed? Because they could come after, if they're going to go after Trump on this, Jeemes, as I said, probably 99% of all real estate developers, they have got the same liability under this law that they charge Trump with. If they get ticked off with you and let's just say they found out you're politically right, they could go after them. And why would you even risk it? I wouldn't. Would you?
Yeah, no. There's a point at which all of this, a good thinking person is going to say, wait a minute, if they could do that for political reasons against a former president of the United States, what will keep them from doing that to me if I'm on the wrong political side of the fence?
Well, that's an excellent point. And look, I will tell you this. I know that there were some truckers that were trying to boycott New York City bringing supplies into there. And I guess it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen what's going to happen, as far as if it's going to be successful or not. But I think that ultimately, I hope, and I'm saying this very carefully because I don't want people to be, the citizens of New York to be hurt, but their leaders have made these decisions. And look, in a way, I hope the state itself goes bankrupt. I do, and I hate to say that, but Governor Hochul is behind this, and she's out there trying to assure everybody, and it's not working, because I think there's been a lot of people that sees this as what it was, and I think they're gonna pay a price for this financially. That is where it's gonna hurt them. That is where it's gonna hurt them. And Letitia James is out there boasting. The judge is basically bragging about it. He fined him $354 million. He can't run a business in New York for 3 years. And if I was Donald Trump, I would never open another business in New York ever. And I wouldn't let it be 3 years. I would just let it be forever and let this liberal hellhole of New York have their liberal hellhole, and then let, again, these developers leave. And when they are left bankrupt, maybe they will see the light and understand what happened was not about the law. It was not about wrongdoing. It was about political persecution and prosecution for political means. To me, it's election interference. You got about 5 minutes. I'll give you the final word.
Well, you said something about New York and the city of the state going bankrupt. Did you see the article, Chris, that the U.S. government is right now on the cusp of interest payments on the national debt?
Yes.
Are going to exceed what we give the Defense Department to operate. That is scary. And I don't hear anybody talking about that.
Yeah, I don't either. And we better start talking about it because we're about to be pretty much bankrupt as a nation, my friend.
That's right. That's my point. We're we are throwing all this money out just because under a fiat currency we can print. We're one of the few countries, and in fact, the only country in the world that can just keep printing money, and not have the consequences for it. I mean, all of this is going on with Trump and the courts and in the Middle East, and man, I know your listeners know if you go to a grocery store, I mean, prices on just ordinary things are going through the roof.
Yeah,
I don't see how ordinary families are living these days. It is just crazy what's going on in the economic realm, in the political realm, in the judicial realm. But I always end my portion of the podcast. The God of this universe is not shaking nervously on his throne. He has all of this figured out, and he will separate those that have the agendas to do his people harm from those that call on his name.
Yes, it does, my friend. Jeemes, it's been such a pleasure tonight. I could keep you forever. We got several other stories, but listen, I'm going to have you back on maybe even next week. We'll do this again. We'll do it by video. But listen, I appreciate you being with me tonight. And again, I'm with you. We need to pray for our country and just keep in mind that the Lord's in control of things, and all things are working together for them that love Him. Correct?
Amen.
That
is absolutely correct. And at the end of the day, God is a good God.
Yes, He is, my friend. Yes, He is. Listen, be blessed. Thank you again for a great night. Thank you for being with me on a Monday. We'll see you next week. God bless, friend.
Thank you, Chris. Bye.
You too. Jeemes Akers, everybody. Put some fire in that house for him. Listen, we're grateful that you've been with us tonight. And that's really all we've got for tonight. And we hope that you'll be with us tomorrow. We've got another show coming up tomorrow night. Now, this week, toward the end, we'll be at the National Religious Broadcasters event, and so we'll be on tomorrow night and Wednesday night, and then we won't have any shows Thursday and Friday, but we will be back with you over the weekend, and then all next week we got some great guests coming, new guests actually, and some old ones, and we hope that you will be with us for that. May the Lord bless you tonight, and if you enjoyed Jeemes, let him know about it by putting some fire in the house. Thank you all for being with me tonight. TheMcFiles.org is our website. PayPal.me/TheMcFiles. PayPal.com, I should say, the website. PayPal.com/TheMcFiles is our PayPal account. Patreon.com. Then Cash.App /$TheMcFiles. And ZELLE, ChrisMac44@gmail.com with Venmo at TheMcFilesChris if you enjoyed the content tonight and would like to donate. Prayers for Israel tonight, and prayers for the United States of America, and our prayers for President Trump. We're going to have James R. on a week from tonight. He has got a lot to say about this situation in New York with Trump, and it ain't good. But I wanted to give him due diligence, and instead of us trying to cram James in on one night, I told James R. tonight, we're going to just do it next Monday. He's good with that. So next Monday night we'll have him. We're going to have a great new guest, Joe Gilbert. He's going to be talking with us about church security and how dangerous it is to go to church, sadly, because of the dangers that he has seen as a security expert and things that he is going to be talking to us about. So we'll have a doubleheader a week from tonight. Tomorrow night, not sure who we're going to have on, but we'll have a guest, and it'll be by phone again, and then so forth. Now, if you're on the Faith Network in the morning, we should have a Bible study tomorrow and Thursday, and that'll be our only two studies of the week. And then again, we'll see you over the weekend. Listen, God bless you. God bless your families. God bless this great nation of America. We hope you enjoyed the one and only Jeemes Akers. We sure did. And as he always does, he never disappoints. Thank you all for being with me tonight. And we will see you tomorrow morning on our Faith Network, and then tomorrow night right back here on the News Network. Until then, McDonald out on a Monday night. Have a good night, everybody. Pray for your country. Be blessed.
It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. It makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch. It's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds and the ink stains that have dried upon some line. That keeps you in the back roads by the rivers of my memory. That keeps you ever gentle on my mind. It's not clinging to the rocks and ivy painted on their columns now that bind me. Something that somebody said because they thought we fit together walking. It's not knowing that the world will not be cursing or forgiven when I walk around the railroad track and find that you're moving on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and hours you're just gentle on my mind. Though the wheat fields and the clotheslines and the junkyards and the highways come between us, and some other woman's crying to her mother 'cause she turned and I was gone, I still might run in silence, tears of joy might stain my face, and the summer sun might burn me till I'm blind. But not to where I cannot see you walking on the back roads by the rivers flowing gentle on my mind. I dip my cup of soup back from a gurgling, crackling cauldron in some train yard. My beard a rustling towel and a dirty hat pulled low across my face. Through cup hands round the tin can, I pretend to hold you to my breast and find that you're waiting from the back roads by the rivers of my memories, ever smiling, ever gentle on my mind.